I'm getting my tubes untied. My ex wants kids. And I think I'm ready again. That's what she said. Word for word. Right between her third bite of grilled chicken and a lazy sip of Pinot Grigio, like she was sharing a funny story about the neighbor's dog. I didn't blink. I didn't ask for clarification, because I didn't need to. When a woman has already emotionally left the building, she stops hiding it. She assumes you'll just stay in the ruins and sweep up. You always said I'm a nurturer, she added, cutting her asparagus like we were discussing vacation plans. I know you'll help. You always do. I looked at her then. Really looked. Her nails were still wet from the appointment she said she was too tired to reschedule last night. She wore the gold pendant I gave her 10 years ago for our anniversary, the one she hadn't touched in months until today. I realized she was dressed up. Not for me. For the performance. She needed to say this in a way that felt empowered. A way that made her feel like a pioneer, not a parasite. I didn't yell. I didn't flinch. I dabbed the corner of my mouth with my napkin like a man finishing the last course of his last meal. Then I nodded slowly. Follow your heart, I said. And that was it. No fight. No tears. Just silence. The kind that comes when the play ends and the lights come up, and suddenly the audience sees the stains on the curtain. Now here's the part one don't expect most people to understand. I didn't leave the table in a rage. I didn't storm off to a buddy's couch or some bar stool somewhere. I went to my office, opened my laptop, and logged into the secure folder I'd started building 6 months earlier. Emails, financial documents, screenshots. There were tabs open she never knew existed. Accounts she never had the passwords to. I scrolled through it all calmly, like checking the weather before a trip I always knew was coming. Most nights, I used to read the news before bed. That night, I read through our prenup instead. While she soaked in a bath upstairs humming along to some empowerment playlist, I routed the last portion of my freelance consulting income into the trust I'd established back in April. Then I opened a private browser and searched 3 things. Divorce attorney with asset protection experience, forensic accountant marriage expenses, and best way to legally freeze joint accounts without alerting the other party. That's when it really hit me. Not what she said at dinner. That was just the match. What hit me was that I hadn't felt shocked. Not really. Not even betrayed. Just validated. Because you don't get to that kind of sentence. I'm getting my tubes untied for my ex. Overnight. That kind of sentence is a long con. 1,000 small dismissals wearing a husband down until he doesn't recognize his own reflection anymore. I'm sharing this because more than 97% of people who watch these stories never subscribe. And frankly, hearing your stories, your reactions, it's what fuels us to keep going, to dig deeper, to make these better. So if you're here, and you've ever sat through a dinner that made you question reality, consider subscribing. It helps more than you know. Back to the story. At around 2:11 a.m., I heard her come down the stairs. She thought I was asleep. She stood at the office door for a second, probably expecting to hear Netflix or snoring. Instead, it was silent, except for the faint click of my mouse as I filed the first packet with my attorney through a secure upload portal. The last thing I did before shutting the laptop was rename the folder that held it all. Freedom Plan, Final Draft. Then I locked the office door behind me. She was already back in bed, smiling in her sleep, maybe dreaming of pastel nurseries and baby showers, maybe picturing me, dutiful and dumb, rubbing her feet after she carried her ex's child. But I was already gone. Still in the house, but gone. 6 months earlier, she stood in front of the mirror adjusting her earrings and said, with a smirk so soft you could almost miss it, "He just gets me, you know?" She was talking about her ex. I was buttoning my shirt for a charity event we'd been planning to attend together. She had just informed me, 2 hours before, that she'd rather go alone, because I was always so stiff around her friends. That was new. Not the insult, that part was familiar. The alone. And he just gets me? That was the first time she'd said it out loud. But not the first time she'd thought it. I'd seen it on her face months before. The first solo spa weekend she took for mental clarity ended with a blurred selfie from what looked like a rooftop bar. 1 glass of champagne. 2 glasses in reflection. She'd captioned it deserved. I didn't argue. Didn't accuse. I noticed. Then I documented. The next morning, while she was out getting what she called preemptive Botox, I had a quiet cup of black coffee in a downtown office with a lawyer who specialized in what he called polite exits from impolite betrayals. He never once looked shocked. Just asked me to be honest. I told him I didn't have proof. He said, "Yet." He gave me names. A forensic accountant, a guy who handled digital evidence ethically, and a contact for setting up a Nevada-based LLC for routing consulting income. I took all three. That week, I separated out my revenue streams. I started invoicing new clients through the LLC. Quietly, I left the household account alone. She wouldn't notice. She hadn't checked our bank balance in months, only the credit limit on the card. She'd started posting motivational quotes again. Ones that said things like, "It's never too late to start over," or "Women aren't rehab centers for broken men." The irony wasn't even worth laughing at. I just noted the timestamps. When the quotes went up, the mood was lifted. Probably after a message from him. Her phone, which used to be an open book between us, was now always face down. Always locked. Notifications turned off. She said it was for mindfulness. She changed the sheets more often. Switched perfumes. Started taking vitamins for fertility, which she insisted were just hormone-balancing supplements. The betrayal didn't come like a slap. Came like dry rot. Slow. Silent. Structural. By the time you saw the crack, it had already eaten through the foundation. So I did what men my age are rarely praised for. I got methodical. While she was finding herself, I was building a firewall. Every work bonus that came in went straight into a secondary trust. She assumed we hadn't gotten any raises this year because the economy's weird. She spent hours researching tube ligation reversal, IVF success rates over 40, and yoga retreats with fertility components. She called it her second spring. I started calling it the audit window. We stopped touching each other somewhere around February. She blamed my low energy. I blamed her contempt. But again, no confrontation. Just observation. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how certain she became that I'd accept it. She'd started treating me like an appliance. Reliable. Stationary. Something to lean on but not to look at. Could have blown up. Kicked down doors. Snooped through messages. But what would that do? Confirm what I already knew? No. I wanted something better. Not revenge. Not even justice. Just release. Release from the burden of being her plan B. From being the fallback guy who's expected to mop up her regrets and help raise her next mistake. So I didn't raise my voice. I raised a firewall. And when she booked her surgery, convinced I'd be there to support her healing, I updated my file, logged her confirmation email. Then I sent a quiet message to my attorney. Green light. Full protocol. He replied within 2 minutes. Understood. Finalizing documents. Discreet timing as requested. She was still downstairs when I got that message. Watching a documentary about birth doulas. Humming like she was 25 again. She thought she was getting a second chance at youth. I was giving myself a first chance at dignity. She laid out 3 identical white tank tops on the bed and asked me which one looked more like a woman in control of her destiny. I said the one with fewer wrinkles. She smiled like I was teasing. I wasn't. There's something especially surreal about watching your wife prepare for a medical consultation where the end goal is to get pregnant with another man's child, while using your car, your insurance, and your emotional bandwidth as scaffolding. But she didn't see it that way. In her mind, this was the next growth phase. A step forward into something meaningful. Into something true. That's the word she kept using. This feels so true. Like she was starring in a one-woman production of Eat, Pray, Impregnate. Her ex was, by her own account, supportive but distant. He didn't attend appointments. He didn't help research providers. He didn't even pick her up. But he had, apparently, said the magic words. Maybe this time we can get it right. She clung to that line like scripture. And me? I drove her to her first IVF consultation. Carried her bag. Waited in the lobby with a lukewarm latte while she talked about hormone injections and egg viability with strangers who assumed I was her loving partner. I smiled. Nodded. Played the role she'd written for me because it bought me time. And time was expensive. That same evening, she posted a photo of her hand on a windowsill. Out of focus. The kind of shot that says nothing and implies everything. The caption read, "New chapters require bold choices. Letting go of what was to embrace what could be." Heart emojis followed. Comments rolled in. "You're so brave. This is your time. Reclaim your life, queen. Shedding old skin and shining." I read each comment with a kind of detached curiosity, the way a coroner might examine a particularly well-preserved corpse. It was fascinating, watching a woman rewrite the narrative in real time, airbrushing out the inconvenient parts. Like how her new chapter was still being funded by our joint account. Or how her bold choice required her legal husband to pick up prenatal vitamins during a grocery run. But she believed the performance. That was the most tragic part. She truly thought this was strength. What she didn't know was that at 10:42 a.m. the next morning, I met with the forensic accountant my attorney had recommended. The guy looked like someone you'd ignore in line at a coffee shop. Balding, beige, carrying a cracked leather binder that hadn't been fashionable since the Clinton era. But when he opened that binder, it was like watching a surgeon prep for open-heart surgery. Bank transfers, purchase logs, phone records that lined up a little too cleanly with her girls' weekends. I told him I didn't care about the infidelity. Not legally, anyway. I cared about the pattern, the misuse of marital funds, the reallocation of shared resources toward a future that didn't include me. He nodded once, quietly professional. Then he slid a stack of papers across the table and said, "Start highlighting anything she didn't tell you about." I ran out of highlighter. Meanwhile, back at home, she ordered a new journal, leather-bound with gold-tipped pages. She said it was for documenting the motherhood path. I helped carry the Amazon box inside. She kissed me on the cheek, told me I was so grounded, so dependable. And then she went upstairs to write about a life that didn't include me while I updated a spreadsheet that would legally erase her access to mine. She started putting up vision boards again. Cutouts of baby rooms and spiritual retreats. Words like alignment, surrender, and legacy. I smiled and poured her chamomile tea while reading messages from my attorney about which bank accounts could be frozen with a single court order. She thought she was building a new life. I was removing the scaffolding one bolt at a time. The most dangerous delusion is the one where the betrayer believes they still have your loyalty in reserve. That no matter what they choose, you'll keep being the safety net. The emotional janitor. The final backup plan. But I had already stopped being that man. I wasn't there to support her future. I was there to escort her quietly out of mine. She woke up in recovery with that smug little post-op grin some people wear when they think the world just bent in their favor. Her phone was already in her hand. God knows how, scrolling through texts she hadn't answered from the week before. One from her ex said, "Let me know how it goes." No emoji, no heart, not even a period. Just enough interest to keep her on the hook. Just enough distance to make her chase. I waited precisely 0 minutes before executing the plan. 8:06 a.m. My attorney filed the divorce papers electronically. 8:24 a.m. The court clerk's office stamped the receipt. By 9 a.m. the automatic freeze was in place. Joint checking, shared savings, even the family trust account she didn't know was still in my name. All assets pending review. I didn't gloat. I didn't even smile. I just sat in my car outside the hospital, one level down in the parking garage, watching the meter tick and sipping lukewarm coffee while emails pinged back from the bank. Confirmed. Action executed. At 1:41 p.m., she rolled into the pharmacy next to the clinic, still a little foggy from anesthesia, wearing oversized sunglasses and that damn scarf she always claimed was her transitional piece. She handed over her prescription, likely some overpriced hormone cocktail with a copay higher than a monthly car payment. Swiped the card. Declined. She tried again. Declined. She frowned, pulled out her phone, and checked the balance. I know that look. That blink too fast stare like the screen must be wrong. She waved it off like it was a system error. Try it manually, she told the tech. Didn't work. She called the card hotline. Still nothing. Her hand was shaking now, but only a little. She wasn't scared yet. Just confused. Maybe a banking issue. Maybe a fraud hold. Maybe Mercury was in retrograde or whatever New Age nonsense her girlfriend swore by this week. She didn't get scared until her lawyer called. I picture it clearly. She's sitting in the passenger seat of the Uber, scrolling, sipping her little green smoothie she always orders post-spa, and then ring. She answers with that voice she uses when she thinks people are about to tell her something nice. "Hey, what's up?" The lawyer's voice is flat. "We just got served." Silence. "You're listed as respondent. He filed this morning. He beat us to it." I know the pause that came next. The little inhale when reality finally punches through the fog. "What?" "It's all on hold," the lawyer says. "Every joint asset. You can't move money, can't withdraw, can't access credit." He locked it down. "But we were fine," she says, and I can hear her trying to calculate the timeline. He said, "Follow your heart." Yes, the lawyer replies. And apparently he followed his. Straight to the courthouse. She didn't cry. Not yet. Women like her don't cry right away. First, they try to reframe it. Control the optics. Explain it away as miscommunication or a misunderstanding. She probably thought she could still talk me out of it. Remind me of anniversaries. Dust off some old inside joke from our early years like a forgotten souvenir. But by the time she got home, the locks had already been changed. Not legally, it wasn't that kind of move. Just the code. The smart lock. She stood outside holding her phone in one hand and a prescription bag in the other, typing in the digits she assumed would never change. Access denied. She rang the bell. I didn't answer. She stood there for 12 minutes, according to the camera log. Long enough to call her lawyer again. Long enough to yell my name twice. Then she left. Slowly. Not dramatically. No tantrum. Just walked away. That night, she posted nothing. No cryptic captions. No blurry windowsill shots. No inspirational quotes about courage or change. Just silence. Because for the first time in months, she realized. The man she assumed would stay under her thumb was already gone. And he'd left nothing behind but a paper trail and a locked gate. He disappeared on a Wednesday. Not dramatically. No confrontation. No scene. Just digital absence. First it was the read receipts, he always left them on. That was part of his charm, she used to say. He's not afraid of transparency. He's real with me. But now the little scene at 9:03 a.m. bubble didn't appear. Then her message sat for hours. Then the chat thread blinked out completely. Blocked. She thought it was a glitch. Had to be. She opened her burner Instagram account, the one he didn't know about, and searched for his profile. Nothing. She asked a friend to check. Profile still there. Just invisible to her. That's when it clicked. Not during the pharmacy decline. Not during the lawyer's call. Not even when the Uber ride back from the clinic ended in front of a locked door. It was when he vanished that the whole scaffolding of her plan started to buckle. The man she pinned her reinvention on, the ex with the deep connection and unfinished chapter, had ghosted her like a bad Tinder match. Just 2 weeks ago, he was sending vague texts about finally doing things right this time. Last week, he sent a screenshot of a nursery color palette he kind of liked. And now, nothing. Just the echo of assumptions. She tried calling him. Straight to voicemail. She tried texting from her sister's number. One word reply, don't. She stood in the kitchen of her friend's condo, because she couldn't afford a hotel anymore. Sweating in a hoodie she claimed was just cozy, but was really the only warm thing she'd packed. She paced while redialing, fingers trembling. Not with sadness, but confusion. Because women like her don't process abandonment right away. They rationalize. They diagnose. They edit. Maybe he's overwhelmed. Maybe he didn't expect it to happen so fast. Maybe he just needs space to adjust to the idea. Maybe he saw the headlines and ran. Because he did see the headlines. Not in a newspaper, but through the grapevine of mutual friends. He heard about the divorce, the frozen accounts, the subpoena. He learned that she wasn't just in transition. She was in free fall. And unlike me, he didn't have the patience to wait and see how it played out. He did what people like him always do. Bailed before it cost him anything. When her sister showed up to drop off some overnight clothes and vitamins, she found her sitting on the floor in the walk-in closet of someone else's house. No music. No lights on. Just quiet. You okay? Her sister asked, a little too flatly. She didn't look up. Just mumbled. He's not answering. Her sister leaned against the doorframe. Your ex. She nodded. Silence. Then her sister, blunt as ever, asked, wait. What exactly did you expect him to do? Raise someone else's kid? It hit like a slap. Not because it was cruel. Because it was the truth spoken plainly, for the first time. It hung in the air, thick as humidity. She opened her mouth to respond and couldn't. Because there was no answer. That was the moment it unraveled, not when I filed. Not when the accounts were frozen. Not even when her IVF prescription bounced at checkout. It was there, on that borrowed carpet, under borrowed lighting, in a condo she could never afford on her own, when she finally understood. She wasn't pregnant with a child. She was pregnant with a fantasy. And it just miscarried. There would be no nursery. No wine and bubble bath pregnancy reveal. No healing arc with her high school sweetheart. Just bills. A shaky recovery. A dwindling list of people willing to return her calls. The girl who once said, "He just gets me," now sat surrounded by unanswered messages and unopened mail. And the man who always got her was already halfway gone. The other had vanished before the anesthesia wore off. It took less than a week for the silence to set in. At first, it came in small shifts. Texts left on read, voice messages ignored. The women who once spammed her posts with, "Yes, Queen Crown," and "You're so brave," suddenly had nothing to say. Not even a passive-aggressive emoji. Not even a like. The story she had curated, this tale of transformation and fearless reinvention, had lost its audience. Her last Instagram post, a filtered photo of her hand clutching a herbal tea mug with the caption, "Healing isn't linear, but it is beautiful," got 3 likes. 2 were from bots. One was from her cousin in Arizona who liked everything by default. No comments. And that silence? It was louder than any insult. Because this crowd, the empowerment echo chamber she had counted on to cheer her through delusion, they weren't loyal. They were trend chasers, performers. They clapped when things looked shiny. But the second reality kicked in. Court filings, financial freezes, a man who left without fanfare. The clapping stopped. She tried texting her closest friend, Tara. "Rough week. Wanna grab wine and catch up?" No response. Then, 2 days later, Tara posted a story from a vineyard patio with someone else. She watched it 3 times, replayed it, zoomed in. That seat? That was usually hers. Her mother called the next morning. Not out of concern, but with a tone that cut like vinegar. "You told him at dinner?" the woman asked, baffled. "Have you lost your mind?" Her mother wasn't even particularly fond of me, but she had enough sense to recognize that sitting across from your husband and casually announcing you're reversing sterilization to get pregnant with your ex's baby wasn't empowerment. It was lunacy. She tried to defend herself. "I was being honest, living my truth." Her mother sighed. "There's a difference between truth and stupidity. You weren't honest. You were theatrical." Click. Call ended. Her father didn't call at all. At brunch the next weekend, a rare invite she wasn't supposed to know was an afterthought. Her sister introduced her as going through some things, instead of the usual. "This is my bold, brilliant sister." That's when it hit her. She had become a cautionary tale. And worse, people had started whispering. She wasn't sure who started it, but someone had shared the real story. That she was left high and dry. That the ex had ghosted. That the divorce was airtight, the money untouchable. She overheard one woman at yoga whisper. She thought she was starring in Eat, Pray, Love, but ended up in a Lifetime rerun. They laughed. She forced a smile, left halfway through the class, and cried in the car. Then posted a black and white photo of her legs in yoga pants on the passenger seat with the caption, "Even the road back to yourself has traffic." No comments. Her lawyer's energy shifted next. He started delegating her emails to his junior associate. Responses were slower, less detailed. At one point, she asked about the timeline for spousal support negotiations, and the reply came back cold. "Given the current asset disclosures, spousal support is unlikely. Let's focus on finalization." In other words, there's nothing left to chase, and you're no longer interesting. What she hadn't understood, what she refused to understand until it was too late, was that public support is conditional. It isn't rooted in truth. It's rooted in optics. And her optics were radioactive. She was no longer the woman boldly reclaiming her womanhood. She was the woman who tried to make her husband co-parent another man's fantasy baby, and got left standing in the ashes with a gym bag and a non-refundable surgical invoice. She kept posting anyway, kept spinning captions like spells, hoping one would bring her world back. But the algorithm isn't kind to irrelevance. And her audience? They'd already scrolled past her. The conference room they used for mediation looked like a Holiday Inn boardroom. Fake wood table, fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly hungover, and a half-dead ficus in the corner that no one watered anymore. Appropriate, really. It was the perfect setting for the slow autopsy of a marriage that had died months before anyone pronounced it. She showed up wearing her courtroom blazer, the one she hadn't worn since jury duty 4 years ago. Her hair was pulled tight, lipstick on like armor, and she carried a black leather folder like it contained a nuclear launch code. The moment she walked in, she tried to seize control, sliding into her seat before I even pulled mine back. The mediator, a woman in her 60s with eyes like dull razors, asked us both to state our positions. Her voice was warm but practiced, neutral by design. My ex-wife leaned in, cleared her throat, and launched into her list. I'm requesting continued access to the primary residence, the Audi, and modest monthly alimony to maintain continuity of lifestyle during transition. She said it with such rehearsed calm, as if she were reading off a menu. The phrase continuity of lifestyle echoed in the room like a joke no one wanted to laugh at. My lawyer didn't flinch. He simply opened his binder, turned a few pages, and slid 3 documents forward. Exhibit A, he said, tapping the first page. Screenshots of text messages, time-stamped, indicating emotional departure and extramarital intent. She scoffed. What does that even mean? Emotional departure? Exhibit B, he continued, ignoring her, is an itemized expense log of spa retreats, fertility consultations, and hotel stays, none of which were shared or consented to by the marital partner. I stayed silent. I didn't need to add anything. He was the voice now. And Exhibit C, he said, finally sliding the 3rd page across the table, is a photograph, dated, geotagged, of her and the third party in question, kissing outside a clinic in Napa. The same day, she requested a funds transfer for what she labeled therapy. She went red, then white, then cold. That's a gross invasion of privacy, she snapped. You're entitled to privacy, the lawyer said, unfazed. But not secrecy, and certainly not at your husband's expense. She turned to me then, finally addressing me directly for the first time in over an hour. Is this who you are now? Cold? Strategic? Vindictive? I folded my hands, looked at her without malice. Just exhaustion. You made a choice, I said calmly. I honored it. You're punishing me, she said, voice tightening. You want to make me pay for moving on. No, I said. I want us both to be free, but that starts with truth. And the truth is, you weren't planning a future with me. You were using me to buffer the one you wanted with someone else. She leaned back, eyes scanning the room like she expected someone to intervene, to stand up and say, this is too harsh. But no one did. The mediator cleared her throat. The proposal from petitioner is 1 year of rent in a comparable apartment, paid up front. In exchange, full waiver of spousal support, asset claims, and property access. A clean break. Her lawyer whispered something in her ear. She didn't respond at first, just stared at the folder in front of her like it might catch fire. Then a single nod. She didn't sign right away. She said she needed to sleep on it. But the truth was, there wasn't anything left to weigh. Her support system had vanished. Her ex had fled. Her friends had gone quiet. And now even the legal system, sterile, transactional, brutal in its logic, was closing the chapter she had tried to rewrite in lipstick and Instagram captions. She used to call me dependable, predictable. Now I was something else, gone. Not in rage, not in revenge, just gone. It started with a reimbursement form, a petty little PDF from the clinic's billing office, titled Out-of-Pocket Reimbursement Request Form. She printed it, highlighted a few rows in yellow, and tucked it into a manila folder labeled Medical, Shared Expenses, as if bold font and plastic tabs could transform delusion into entitlement. She sent it to my attorney's office with a polite note. Please find attached itemized statements for the procedure performed on date. Given our prior arrangement to split healthcare costs, I am requesting reimbursement of 50%, totaling $6,482.79. There was no mention of the word tubal reversal. No mention of the ex. No acknowledgement that this surgery was the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. Just numbers, file names, and a half-hearted assumption that I would continue, even now, to fund her fantasy. My lawyer called me the minute he saw it. I didn't even have to say anything. He just chuckled softly and said, Clause 17C of the prenup. She forgot. Clause 17C. I remembered that one clearly. We'd added it after our 2nd year of marriage, when I had covered her elective LASIK and then later got blindsided by a $900 skincare injection she claimed was for confidence. After that, we amended the agreement. No financial responsibility for elective or reproductive procedures that primarily benefit third parties. She didn't even read it before sending the form. At the next meeting, her attorney brought it up as if it were a formality. As part of closing expenses, Ms. Walker requests partial reimbursement for her medical procedure. My attorney didn't miss a beat. He opened the folder, turned to the relevant page of the prenup, and laid it in front of them. Clause 17C is very clear. No reimbursement for procedures meant to benefit third parties. This wasn't a medically necessary operation. It was elective, and it wasn't intended to benefit the marital relationship. Therefore, not eligible. She blinked. He's not a third party, she said, almost laughing. He's someone I cared about. Exactly, my attorney said. But not your husband. She didn't know what to say to that. Her lawyer shifted uncomfortably, adjusting his tie like it was suddenly too tight. She looked around the room, confused, waiting for someone to intervene. Maybe she thought this was the part where I'd step in, sigh, and say something noble like, "I'll cover it anyway. We shared so much." But I stayed silent, because what she called care, I called cost. She tried to pivot. But we always agreed to share health expenses. This isn't some manicure or spa day. This was important to me. It may have been, my lawyer replied, calm and final, but it wasn't shared, and it wasn't for the marriage. Your romantic investment in another man doesn't obligate your husband to underwrite it. I watched her face fold in on itself, confusion giving way to disbelief, disbelief to indignation, indignation to something uglier, helplessness. She'd counted on me funding her second act. She thought I would remain a silent investor in a life that no longer included me. She believed, in that deep narcissistic way, that past kindness guaranteed future compliance. And now, she was stuck with the bill. $6,482.79. Due in full. No installment plan. No coverage. No shared deductible. Just a total, printed in bold at the bottom of the invoice. She would have to pay for her own freedom. Alone. And for the first time since the dinner table bombshell, I think it finally sank in. Even her body's choices came with consequences. And she couldn't charge those to me anymore. The final hearing wasn't dramatic. No gasps. No objections. No last-minute revelations. Just a judge with tired eyes, flipping through paperwork like it was a lunch receipt, and lawyers checking their watches like they had somewhere better to be. She came in wearing white. Some subconscious attempt at symbolism, probably. A second rebirth? A new chapter? A blank slate? It didn't matter. The sleeves were too long, the shoulders too squared. It didn't look like a new beginning. It looked like a costume. I didn't wear anything special. Just a dark suit and a quiet expression. She didn't look at me when she walked in. Not until the judge read the decree aloud. Marriage dissolved. No alimony granted. No property redistribution. Each party retains assets and liabilities in their own name. Her lawyer flinched at the phrasing, liabilities in their own name, because that one clause sealed it. Her clinic debt. Her credit card balance. The 3-month lease she signed under the assumption that I'd fund the deposit. All hers now. She stood up when the judge thanked us for our respectful cooperation. That phrase almost made me laugh. If only he knew. As we left the courtroom, she lingered near the double doors. Not fully blocking the path, but enough to make sure I'd have to walk by her. She waited until I was within 3 feet before she finally looked at me. There was no venom in her eyes. No pride. Just a raw, hollow ache that seemed to sit in her skin like lead. "Was I really that disposable to you?" she asked, barely above a whisper. I stopped, not because I owed her an answer, but because I wanted her to hear it. "You were irreplaceable," I said slowly. "But you replaced me anyway." She blinked. Once, twice, like she expected some follow-up. Caveat. A softening. There was none. I nodded once and stepped past her. Behind me, I heard her lawyer calling her name, asking about a signature she'd missed. She didn't respond right away. Maybe she was thinking about that dinner table again. Maybe she was replaying that moment she thought she had all the cards. That she could drop a line like, "My ex wants kids," and I just absorb the blow, smile through it, and carry her purse out the door. Or maybe she finally realized that when you dismantle a marriage piece by piece, don't be surprised when there's nothing left standing when you need shelter. She had believed in emotional elasticity, that no matter how far she pulled the bond, it would snap back. That no betrayal was final if the performance afterward was convincing enough. But she'd pulled too far. And now, she exited the building with nothing but her phone, a pale blue folder, and the debt of a decision made in delusion. The surgery she financed on borrowed identity. The life she planned around a man who vanished the moment responsibility entered the chat. I didn't look back. Not because I didn't care anymore, but because caring was no longer part of the contract. The lake doesn't speak, and that's why he chose it. Not for the trout or the solitude or the Instagram-worthy sunsets, though all of that helps, but because the lake has no memory. It doesn't ask questions. It doesn't remind him of old fights or whispered betrayals. It just is. Calm. Unbothered. Like the man who now sits beside it in a folding chair, a cup of black coffee in one hand and a tackle box cracked open at his feet. His sister shows up every few weekends. Brings her kids. They chase each other through the brush like laughter was currency and they were rich. He grills. She bakes. They don't talk about her. Not because it's off limits. Because it's unnecessary. That chapter ended so precisely, so cleanly. It left no blood on the page. She's not part of this world anymore. She's a shadow behind a locked door. A name erased from a contact list. A story told in fragments, whispers over wine, half-finished rumors in Pilates class. Someone says she moved in with a friend. Someone else says she tried reaching out to her ex again. He didn't answer. He's dating a yoga instructor now. Younger. Less complicated. Probably has no idea what kind of storm she used to be. Once she tried calling. Just once. Private number. Midday. He let it ring. The voicemail was 5 seconds of silence. He didn't save it. Back at the lake, he casts his line and watches the ripples stretch across the surface. Everything he owns now fits into a life he can manage. No high-maintenance partnerships. No shared calendars. Just peace and decisions that don't require permission. He never became bitter. That's what most people won't understand. He didn't burn the old house down. He just walked out and never looked back. Let the wind take it. Let time bleach the colors from her memory until all that was left was grayscale and silence. The surgery? Never reimbursed. The debt? Still in her name. The life she thought she'd live. With the ex? The nursery? The Instagram fairy tale of second chances? Gone before it began. Vapor. Every once in a while, someone from their past will reach out to him and say, "Hey, I ran into her. She asked about you." He just smiles politely and says, "Tell her I'm well." And he is. Not flashy, not dramatic, just well. The kind of wellness that comes from surviving someone else's fantasy and choosing, finally, to live outside of it. She planned a future. Built it on quicksand. Thought he'd stay and hold the walls up while she repainted the ceiling for someone else. But he walked. Quietly. Completely. And now the only thing left from that dinner table, where she grinned and said, "My ex wants kids, and I think I'm ready again," is silence. Permanent. Heavy. Earned. The kind that settles not in the air, but in your name. Because she didn't just lose him. She lost access to who she was when he still saw value in her. And there's no surgery in the world that can reverse that.